Hello and welcome. I know it's been a while, but that's because I've been working on some cool stuff that I'm finally ready to share with you guys. My powered synergy cube is going to be on Magic Online May 4th through 11th, so that's about 1 week from today. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check it out. There's a lot of awesome stuff going on in that cube. The video today and the follow-up videos I'm going to post are going to be more like podcast style formatting, where it's more about me talking through my cube and things like that. So you can listen through the video if you'd like to, but there will be some things that I'm showing on the screen. But this video today is just going to be talking through the cube, kind of my design philosophy of like why I made the cube and what the goals of the cube were, what the cube is, what to expect, deck examples, and things like that. So today is going to be an overview, and then I'm going to go through each of the colors and break down the archetypes in the following videos. So briefly, what the cube is, it's a powered cube. So that means I'm running cards like Black Lotus, Mox Sapphire, Soul Ring, and Ancestral Recall. These are all like the strongest enablers in Magic's history, right? Black Lotus adds 3 mana, things like that. But I'm not doing the typical thing, which is I'm not running a lot of the cards that win the game on their own. Or to put it another way, like single card win conditions are just cards that are insane on their own. A couple examples that are like Chase the Mind Sculptor. You know, this card famously just you play this, you win the game. He's very, very good. Teferi, he doesn't win the game on his own, but he takes over the game in a way that I just didn't enjoy. This one I think was more for gameplay reasons than fun. Like I also just wanted cards to be fun. Ragavan is a good example of a card that just like was too strong. You don't need things to enable it. If you play this in attack turn 1, things get out of hand very quickly. Layla is another huge example. This is probably the quintessential card of like, this is like a 3 mana 3/3 haste that draws you cards and grows quickly. Like if your opponent doesn't answer it, immediately it just ends the game, and you could just put it in any type of deck. So like these type of cards, I guess there's a couple more like Murktide Regent. You know, you play this as like a 8/8 flyer, and it closes out games very quickly. So these types of cards is what I'm trying to avoid in my cube, because they're very straightforward. You just play your power, you play your big cards, and you kind of draft some enablers. There's not a whole lot of thought process behind what you put into your decks aside from like, I'm in blue, I'm going to take Ancestral Recall, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and Murktide Regent. So instead of aiming for cards that win the game without too much help, I wanted the cube to be full of all of the strongest enablers in Magic's history to enable strategies and synergies. So you're rather than just casting a 3 mana card that's going to win the game in 3 turns, you're building up a deck as a cohesive unit that works together to do more interesting things. So like instead of Murktide Regent, maybe you play Scourge of Nel Toth. This card is one of my favorite cards in the whole cube. Flying, you can cast it from your graveyard by paying black and sacrificing 2 creatures. So it's effectively a 2 mana 6/6 flying creature, which is similar to like Murktide Regent, you know, in terms of stats. But you need to do all of these things to enable it. You need to get Scourge of Nel Toth in your graveyard somehow. You need to have 2 creatures to sacrifice. But once you do that, this card's insane because not only can you cast it from the graveyard once, but you can keep doing it. So like if you cast it, they kill it. You could just sacrifice 2 more creatures and bring it back. If you combine this with something like Bazaar of Baghdad, Bridge from Below, Vengevine, suddenly your team's getting pretty scary. And so that's the type of deck that I'm aiming for. Something like Anger too, as long as Anger is in your graveyard and you have a mountain, creatures you control have haste. So, you know, you play that with Scourge of Nel Toth, right? You discard them both. Suddenly you send this flying 6/6 dragon at your opponent's face. That's the type of thing I'm trying to get to, where when you play your big cards and your big payoffs, it feels like you've earned the right to like do this thing, right? You have this big 6/6 flyer. So that's what I'm going for. And to enable that, there's also like some more synergy-driven cards, like Oswald Fiddlebender. I love this card. For white and tap, you can sacrifice an artifact, and you search for an artifact with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. So it's like Birthing Pod for artifacts. I wanted to turn artifacts from, you know, cast Tinker, get a Blightsteel, win the game, into like Black Lotus is so cool with Oswald or like Mox Sapphire because they're just great enablers, right? With Oswald, you can like play Mox Sapphire, sacrifice it, grab a Soul Ring, and then you sacrifice Soul Ring and grab like your Cranial Plating. There's an artifact creature deck in this cube, by the way. Cranial Plating, when you enable it, is a ridiculous magic card, right? When you equip creature gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. When you're running Boxin, Black Lotus, things like that, you can have like a 15 power Ornithopter. And for me, that felt a lot more fun of, you know, I've built my deck so that Cranial Plating is good, rather than just playing Tinker as a 1-card win condition for like Blightsteel Colossus or whatever. Tinker is still in the cube, but all of the big artifacts are not. So instead of tinkering for a win condition, you're tinkering for Cranial Plating or tinkering for Krark Clan Ironworks, which is in the cube as well, so that you can enable your synergies a bit better. To me, it just seemed fun. Another example, green is no longer just kind of big, fatty ramp. Green is a fully functional elves deck in it with like Heritage Druid. There's also a combo side and an aggressive elf side. So there's a lot of different variations here, but like Heritage Druid is, again, an example of this card that's like, when you enable it, it's insane. You tap 3 elves and you get mana to your mana pool that lets you, if you play this turn 1 or turn 2, you can just kind of go off very quickly. So there's like a glimpse of nature elves combo deck, which I personally found a lot more fun than just ramping into like a 5-mana Planeswalker every time. There's more decision-making and intricacies to it. And then, of course, there's a graveyard deck. Vengevine, I mentioned it with Scourge of Meltoth. There's Bazaar of Baghdad, there's Hogak in the cube. So all of these fully functional synergies that normally they would be overshadowed by the single card win conditions, right? Why are you going to enable your Scourge of Meltoth through all of this like work when you could just play Murktide Regent instead in a normal format? But because I've removed all of those 1-card win conditions, you get to reap the benefits of all of this effort you've put into drafting and planning your deck to do something really, really cool. And the cube just plays out so much fun. So that's the fundamental idea behind the cube. Let's go through just some example deck lists. I guess that's probably a good way to get a feel for what's in the cube. So we're moving to my Discord now, where we've been doing a lot of sample drafts. There'll be linked to the Discord in the description if you're interested, but I'm just going to go through a bunch of decks that I've somewhat randomly collected over the drafts for the last few weeks. Some of them are going to include cards that are no longer in the cube, just because we were testing stuff in the very end, but for the most part, this is the current cube list. So here's an example of an artifact-style deck that could work. So you have like Tolarian Academy, Sol Ring, Mox Opal, you know, all of these really strong enablers. And then you have like Nettle Cyst, Auriok Salvagers, Tishar to like go deep. Tishar is whenever you cast essentially an artifact spell, you can return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you cast an artifact creature spell, you could just go off very quickly. So this deck is similar. It's like trying to gain value off of these like artifact loops where you have Oswald Fiddlebender we mentioned before, where you can crack like a Mishra's Bauble into a Sol Ring. Oni Cult Anvil, whenever an artifact leaves the battlefield during your turn, create a colorless construct. It only happens once per turn, but you can get value off of like Oswald Fiddlebender sacrificing Mishra's Bauble or Goblin Weldering away a Mox Opal. So you build your deck so that you accrue this value over time. And then it has this win condition with Auriok Salvagers, which is it's the Bomberman. For 2 mana, you can return an artifact with mana value 1 or less from your graveyard to hand. Alongside Pirate Spellbomb, you can start burning your opponent out, things like that. So that's kind of an example of an artifact deck. There's a lot of these, so I don't want to go too in depth. Here's a deck I just drafted, which is kind of Esper Blink control. Started out as ninjas, but then I got like a bunch of like Restoration Angels, Yorians, Soul Herders, and things like that. So just very controlling. As you can see, the mana in this cube is very good too. I should mention that, I guess. I have triple fetch lands in the cube. So there's 3 Arid Maces, 3 Misty Rainforests, 3 Scalding Tarns. Then there's 2 of each dual. So there's 2 Volcanic Islands and 2 Steam Vents. Same for all the rest. And then there's 1 of each of the Triomes as well. So the fixing is quite good in this cube. But you get this really low to the ground curve, all these cheap interactive spells, and none of these cards are like incredible on their own. But combining them all together, you get this awesome deck where you're like Soul Herdering your Wall of Omens to draw cards, Time Walk to get ahead in like tempo. You can fetch Time Walk off Spellseeker. So it just feels really fun to me. I'm just going to keep going through these. Here's an example of, this is like lands with Anger Vengevine. I guess Titania Protector of Argoth. I should probably just be pulling these up. Hang on. So this is the cube list. If you want to look up cards that I'm mentioning and you don't know what they do or just want to look through the cube list, it's cubecobra.com/cube/list synergy. It'll be in the description so you can find it. But if I mention a card you're not sure what it is, you could just come here and look up Titania, Protector of Argoth. When she enters the battlefield, you return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then whenever a land you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you create a 5/3 green elemental creature token. So she's extremely strong if you have a deck where lands are entering your graveyard. And that's what Squandered Resources is. So Squandered Resources is an enchantment that lets you sacrifice lands to gain mana. So you basically play Squandered Resources. You find a way to get Anger into your graveyard. Oh, they have Survival of the Fittest. Ooh, that one's worth bringing up here. I had planned for this to be like a very organized video, but I just get excited. So, well, bear with me. Survival of the Fittest, green. Choose and discard a creature card. Search your library for a creature card. Reveal a card, put it in your hand. So you can search up Anger, and then you can discard Anger to search up Titania. And then Anger is in your graveyard, so Titania and all of her elementals gain haste. And that's just an example of planning out your win condition, where now you know how your deck is going to win, and you build your deck or set it up in such a way that that's going to happen. And I think that's really awesome. They also have like Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burn Willows combos, Strip Mine, Crucible of Worlds, Valaka Exploration with Exploration, classic combo. So just a really sweet deck overall, and that's what I like. They also have a Corvold, Favorite Cursed King. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a counter on Corvold and draw a card. That includes lands, so you can squander resources with like Corvold and Titania out, draw a ton of cards, make an army, everything has haste, swing at your opponent, take them down. This is a sweet deck, actually. I like that a lot. And that's what I'm going for. I want the feeling of like, this deck is sweet, instead of just like, that card is sweet. Because cards are played in decks, and it's like, it's really tough to come up with an example, but like in this cube, when you're drafting a deck, and all of your cards like play a role in that. In most other cubes, you'd kind of take good cards, and there is some synergy amongst them, but it's not enforced as hard, where like you can just win with, a big play. But in this case, that big play, in almost all cases, has to be enabled by the rest of your deck. So this is a pretty good example of a KCI combo deck. So Tinker, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's no longer 3 mana win the game. It's more like 3 mana tutor up the best artifact in your deck. It's like a demonic tutor, kind of. In this case, that would be Quark Clan Ironworks. Sacrifice an artifact, add 2 to your mana pool. There's a whole article on this that I'll mention, but KCI is a combo deck. So you combo it with Mirror Retriever, Scrap Trawler, Junk Diver, and Workshop Assistant. And you could just essentially go through your entire deck. So this deck can combo off really hard, and it's awesome. But a good example of a card that is going to be a huge menace, but only because of the deck it's in, is like Patchwork Automaton. So we can go... Where's that dude? Patchwork Automaton. He's a 2 mana creature, 1/1 with Ward 2. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, put a counter on him. So on his own, right, you can't just put this in any deck and succeed. You need this guy in a heavy artifacts deck. But when you do that, suddenly he's like a 2 mana 7/7 with Ward 2 that just keeps growing out of control. And that's like, that experience is exactly what I'm looking for in this cube, and I love it so much. So like, this person could be beating down with that. They have Blood Artist plus these KCI combos. Just like it looks like a pretty cool deck overall. One thing to mention, the curve in this cube is extremely low. So there's a lot of like 1 and 2 mana plays. So companioning Lurrus, which is what this person here is doing, is not out of the question. So now you get to do like Black Lotus, Lurrus of the Dream Den companion, which is kind of awesome. Some really good removal, Prismatic Ending, March. Michiko's Reign of Truth is a card that is, again, ridiculous. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So, if you have like Mox Pearl, discard Esper Sentinel, Lion Sash, Aethersworn Canonist, suddenly this is growing your team by like +7/+7 or more every turn, and then it turns into like a 10/10 creature. But that's only true if you draft your deck around it in such a way. So that, okay, hopefully I'm not beating a dead horse here, but we'll just go through the decks now. There's a Lurin combo. So what Lurin says, any player may cast a creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less with flash and without paying the mana cost. So the combo with this card is something like Shrieking Drake, which, or any of these creatures where they enter the battlefield and then you return them back to your hand. Like Mana War, like when it enters, you can return a creature to its owner's hand. You just target itself. So if you can cast it for no mana, suddenly you're like replaying it a bunch. And then if you cast Glimpse of Nature, which says whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, then you can draw your entire deck. There's other things like Earthcraft, which lets you tap creatures for mana by untapping lands. So now you get infinite mana, infinite cards, and you draw your deck. So like in this example, Allurin is an amazing card, but more specifically, the decks that play Allurin, the whole deck is amazing because you can't just put this in any deck and it'll be good. You need to draft a deck where it works. And when you do, it's so awesome. Like this deck is so cool. You just get a bunch of mana, draw your whole deck. Mirror Entity is a win condition. When you get infinite mana, you just turn all your creatures into, 100 things and swing for lethal. So that's a cool deck. Here's just a good control deck. I think Jeskai Flicker, Yorion Ardent Elementalist, Restoration Angel with some counter spells, removal spells, things like that. Just a sweet deck overall. Still some synergy there. You still have to plan out your win conditions. Less synergy than other decks, but I think that's totally fine. This one, the synergy is like Restoration Angel, Spell Queller, Soul Herder type stuff is just good value, and that I agree with. Artifact Esper Ninjas, this is a sweet one. Just again, another control deck, but you get a lot of value from your ninjas hitting, from your artifacts hitting, and things like that. Here's a sacrifice deck. So I'm just showing these to give you an idea of like what is in the cube. Here we have like Witches Oven Cauldron Familiar, Mayhem Devil, Phyrexian Altar, Pitiless Plunderer, things like that. So you get this sacrifice core, but then this one's sweet because it's like artifacts and creature sacrifice. So you get Voldaren Bloodcaster, Gadrak the Crown Scourge, Scrap Trawler, Onicult Anvil, and I'll probably have to show what those are. So Gadrak, it's a card that I had to add, but basically at the beginning of your end step, you can make a treasure for each non-token creature that died. So like if you sacrifice a bunch of creatures, you're going to get artifact tokens. Onicult Anvil, I think I mentioned before, but you can tap this to sacrifice artifacts, deal 1 damage to an opponent. What is this? Voldaren Bloodcaster is awesome. Whenever it or another non-token creature you control dies, you make a blood token. And then if you have 5 more blood tokens, she turns into like this giant flying army. But the cool thing is, she basically makes your creatures die into artifacts, so some decks care just about the artifacts. But blood tokens specifically let you discard cards, so if you have Voldaren Bloodcaster out, and you're trying to get something like Scourge of Neltoth in your graveyard, you can sacrifice a creature, make a blood token, then sacrifice your blood token to get the Scourge, and your deck starts functioning that way too. So she does a lot of like cool things for a lot of different decks. I think in the example deck we're looking at here, they mostly cared about the artifact tokens because they have like, they have Tolarian Academy too. Okay, that's really sweet. Yeah, the deck's fun. But that's an example of like a deck that's like, you look at it and you're like, that deck is sweet. There's no specific card in here, maybe Mayhem Devil. But even then, like you need sacrifice triggers for Mayhem Devil to be good. So there's no like one card that just takes over the game. It is all of them working together synergistically. Here's an example of like a green-black zombies discard deck where you're running like Rotting Rats, Putrid, Cabal Therapy, and things like that, Altar of Dementia, to get Hogak and Scourge of Neltoth into your graveyard. And then once you have them in your graveyard, you can cast them and do cool things like that. But, Hogak, famously good and constructed, very difficult to enable in limited. When you do enable him, he's good, but takes a lot to get there. So it's just cool to see a limited format where he can thrive and you can enable him and cast him and do all that cool stuff. Where are we now? This is just a really good artifacts pile. Clean, we have Tolarian Academy. There's no Mishra's Workshop here, but imagine Workshop in this deck, right? Like, I want to take advantage of all these broken enablers like Mishra's Workshop, so you can draft a deck that takes advantage of them, but it's still a synergistic deck. So we have a Thopter Foundry. I actually don't have Sword of the Meek, but I think it's still good in this deck because I have Scrap Trawler and things like that, so I can just loop my artifacts and make 1/1 flyers that I can then equip Cranial Plating or Nettlecyst to, things like that. More discard decks. There's still controlling decks. Green-white is quite good at that, actually. I think this is the deck that I drafted. This side of the cube is pretty gross. Strip Mine, Black Lotus, Mox Pearl, Mox Emerald. And then just all the removal, right? Portable Hole, Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshares, Prismatic Ending. But the thing you'll notice is, like, it's very actually difficult for this deck to win the game. I have Restoration Angel, Yorion, but if those get answered, my late game win conditions are not amazing. aside from the fact that I have Retrofitter Foundry hidden stockpile and like a Lion Sash and some minor other synergies going around there, Ephemerate, Eternal Witness. You know, Eternal Witness gets any card back, you can't get back Ephemerate. So I've built in these late game plans into this deck so that I can take advantage of all this early removal. So I disrupt my opponent, but then I still have a late game plan. Instead of just playing like a 5-mana Planeswalker and winning the game, my game plan is like Ephemerate, Eternal Witness, and then eventually win off Retrofitter Foundry hidden stockpile. And for those who haven't seen it, I'll just go to Retrofitter Foundry because it's a very good card. This one is the closest to bordering on like a 1-card win con in my cube, but it's slow enough and interactive enough that I think it's okay. But for 2 mana, you make a 1/1 servo. Then you can sacrifice that servo and make a 1/1 flying Thopter. Then you sacrifice the Thopter and make a 4/4 construct. So it takes a lot of time, but with infinite mana, you can make an infinite-sized army. If you have things that make servos, you can make Thopters right away, which, where's Orzhov? Hidden Stockpile makes servos, so now with Retrofitter Foundry, you can just sacrifice this to make a Thopter. The beautiful thing is, this triggers when anything leaves the battlefield at the end of your turn. So if you sacrifice your servo to make a Thopter, you're just going to get another servo from Hidden Stockpile. And then suddenly you have this like way to build an army that's kind of baked into your deck. That's so cool. So yeah, this deck was brutal. Source of Plowshares, Path Exile, Prismatic Ending. Just a fun deck. Storm, obviously still in the queue, but this one is particularly interesting because it's running Jeskai Ascendancy, Containment Construct, Lion's Eye Diamond. Containment Construct says whenever you discard a card, you can exile that and then play it. So Jeskai Ascendancy is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, draw a card, then discard card. So with Containment Construct out, that's effectively just draw a card. But then you get some extra benefits of like putting things in your graveyard, like maybe you want to discard Echo of Aeons to cast it for cheaper. Fill your graveyard for like Delve, Treasure Cruise, things like that. So it's just these like really creative Storm decks that I like seeing too. Lion's Eye Diamond with Containment Construct out acts like a Black Lotus because you discard your hand, but you can still play the cards after you discarded them. So I quite like that a lot. Here's another graveyard-based deck. This one is going like Underworld Cookbook, Asmorandis, Kanar, Balar. I don't know how to say that. But then it has like the 2 Root Wallows plus Bazaar of Baghdad with Squee, Goblin, Nabob, and Angie's Ravager. So let's go to those. Squee is a fun one. I love Squee. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can return it from your graveyard to your hand. That's all it does. So if you pair it with something like Bazaar of Baghdad, which is over here, draw 2 cards, discard 3 cards. Suddenly you're drawing 2 cards, discarding 2 cards effectively. So you're just like looting 2 every turn. And then if you have, the Root Wallows, which I showed before, they have mana 0. You can cast them for 0. So you're just like getting this incredible amount of value off of this card, Bazaar of Baghdad, that's normally, if you put it in a random deck, it would not be that good, but it lets you put Ox of Agonius, Scourge of Naltoth in your graveyard, and things like that. Going through more, just a good, like, basically mono red Storm list. I like it a lot. Yeah, not too much to say here, except for it's specifically the mono red Storm list that I built for this cube, which is based around Finale of Promise, Increasing Vengeance, and Bonus Round. I'll talk about that more in the mono red video when we get to there. Here's just a really clean sacrifice list. Nether Trader is like the quintessential sacrifice combo card. Whenever another creature card is put in your graveyard from the battlefield, you can play back black. If you do, return it to the graveyard to the battlefield. And like, you just get all of these awesome enablers: Greater Gargadon, Mayhem Devil, Kolaghan's Command, Yawgmoth, Grand Physician, and I love this cube so much. So that's cool. Here's a couple of fun Jeskai Ascendancy lists. I drafted this one. I don't know if this is good, but it's just cool that you get to use all these cards in a bunch of different ways. But the end result is you have an awesome deck and you're going to be winning in a whole bunch of different ways. So I still have the Jeskai Ascendancy Containment Construct combo, but I have Hogak in here now too, because I can discard him to Jeskai Ascendancy and bring him back. I was looking for Anger, which is the card that gives your creatures haste, because with Jeskai Ascendancy, you can discard Anger, start giving your team haste, and then suddenly, like Birds of Paradise, you can play it with haste, and then every time you cast a non-creature spell, it grows. We have Deep Analysis, which has flashback to draw 2 cards with Jeskai Ascendancy, Wheel of Fortune, things like that. Just a really spicy deck. The beautiful thing is, there's like a billion different ways to draft this. So here's like a paradoxical outcome Urza, Sai, Saheeli combo list with like all of these baubles. But then they also have Jeskai Ascendancy Emery, which is an infinite combo because Emery, you can tap her to play an artifact. And then when you play the artifact, she untaps from the Ascendancy. So you can like play your whole deck. It's just like, there's so many different ways to do it. Fate Stitcher with Jeskai Ascendancy is like a classic combo. So we have all these decks coming together. Here's like basically a control deck, Black-White Lurrus with Inquisition of Kozilek, Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, Prismatic Ending, Skull Clamp. But then their win condition is based on, Putrid Goblin. So they have like persist combos in here with Melira, Anafenza, Putrid Goblin, which has persist, so you can like sacrifice it a million times, grow Carrion Feeder to large proportions, or the Meat Hook Massacre can either be a board wipe or a win condition with your persist combos. So things like that are really cool. And then more graveyard decks. I don't know if you've noticed, I've been jamming on like mono black zombies lately. I'm very fond of this. So the mana wasn't good in this deck, but I'm basically mono black. We have Bridge from Below, Lion's Eye Diamond, Hogak, Vengevine, and then just like Scourge of Neltoth and all of this like really good graveyard stuff. Another deck list that was literally mono black. Ooh, this one was really fun. Bazaar of Baghdad to like fill my graveyard, and then Bridge from Below, Vengevine, Hogak, Scourge of Neltoth with all of these beautiful, beautiful cards. One of them is which Rotting Rats. When it enters the battlefield, each player discards a card and then unearth. So this is like one of the best synergy-driven cards. Like if you were to play this card, if you just looked at this card, it looks really bad. But the thing is, it does literally all of the things you need it to do in this cube. Where you play it, each player discards a card. So you're threatening your opponent, right? You're decreasing the total quality of their hand. But then you get to put something like Scourge or where's Bridge from Below? Bridge from Below in your graveyard, where this set only works if it's in your graveyard. And if it is, whenever a non-token creature dies on your side of the field, you make a 2/2 black zombie. So like, you can play Rotting Rats and discard Scourge of Neltoth. Then you play like Miasmic Mummy. Each player discards a card, discard Bridge from Below. Flashback Scourge of Neltoth, sacrificing both of them, get 2 zombies. Like, you know, you can start going from there. Maybe you cast Hogak after that and go off from there. So that's kind of an overview of the deck lists in the cube. And all right, I may have gone off the rails a bit going through the deck list, but I enjoy this cube, and I'm not well versed in making these types of videos yet. But I just wanted to go through the cube and show what I've learned. I have a much more concise written descriptions of everything that I'm doing here on my website. So if you go to calebgannon.com, this will be like the homepage. You click MTG, and then all of my MTG articles that I've written are here. You can load all of them. The hub one is Introduction to My Powered Synergy Cube, where I've written down everything about this cube in particular in detail, but then it links to all of the archetypes, and these are very in depth. Like this explains how you play the KCI combo. Like this is a big article. Like you can see, we're just gonna give you a little bit of dizziness here, but there's a lot here. So I'm gonna be making videos going through each of these articles more in depth. But if you just want to read them, you totally can too, or you could do both. Otherwise, just enjoy the videos, and on May 4th, the cube is out, so be sure to draft it. Thank you guys, and I'll see you then. If you made it this far into the video, you're clearly enjoying the content. So if you want to help support me being able to make more content, there's 2 ways to do it. The first is free and very easy, just following me on Instagram. You get, to see cool stuff like this cat made out of trees, or this dog that's an island. Some very interesting or trippy videos like this one, which it's not for everybody. The other one is just going to my store. I sell art like the ones I've shown. So there's a lot of cool stuff there. You can shop the collections and see things like this. I'm selling t-shirts, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you.